Every year, fans, analysts, and even players themselves try to crack the code to find the one stat, the one number, that can explain why one team ends up holding the trophy while the others go home. We dive into offensive ratings, clutch performance, defensive matchups, and who can shoot the three ball the best under pressure. But no matter how many charts or graphs we look at, the NBA playoffs always find a way to surprise us. That is, until this year. Because in 2025, two very specific stats that were staring us right in the face the entire regular season basically predicted everything. From the upsets to the blowouts, the conference finals to the last game of the finals. Two numbers that didn't just show who could win it all, they showed us who would every postseason. The conversation gets louder. Analysts on TV pull out their favorite metrics: team efficiency, shot quality, playoff experience. Fans argue over whether having a top 5 defense still matters, or if today's NBA is all about spacing and scoring. But if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that the old rules don't always apply anymore. Just ask the 2023 Nuggets. They had the 15th ranked defense during the regular season, and yet they walked through the playoffs like a team with no weaknesses. Then there's the 2015 Warriors, a so-called jump shooting team that was never supposed to win at all, until they became one of the greatest dynasties ever. Or take last year's Celtics, who were criticized for relying too heavily on the three.
Another look at that pass that
right before they went 16-3, nearly swept their way to the finals. What does that tell us? That stats only matter if you're looking at the right ones. And in the 2025 playoffs, two stats quietly followed every major storyline. Two numbers that weren't flashy, that didn't dominate headlines, but quietly separated contenders from pretenders. The first was turnover percentage, not just individual carelessness, but how well an entire team protects the ball over 4 quarters, over a 7-game series, when every possession is life or death. The second was free throw differential, not just how many free throws a team takes, but how many more they take compared to their opponents. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but these two stats ended up shaping the entire path to the finals. Let's start with turnovers. You can have the most explosive scorer in the world, the best shooter spaced all around the arc, but if you can't hang on to the ball, none of it matters. Every turnover in the playoffs is magnified. A careless pass in the second quarter can swing momentum. A lost dribble in the fourth can cost you the game. And there were only 2 teams all season long who consistently didn't make those mistakes. The Thunder and the Pacers sound familiar. It should. In the regular season, OKC finished first in turnover percentage. Indiana finished third. They didn't just run pretty offenses, they ran efficient, surgical ones. Shai, Gilgeous-Alexander, and Tyrese, Haliburton, 2 of the most unique lead guards in the game, led their teams with drastically different styles. Shai attacked in isolation, always calm, always in control. Haliburton orchestrated from the top, picking apart defenses before they could react. But both had one thing in common: they didn't give the ball away. In fact, Shai made history averaging over 30 points while keeping turnovers under 2.5 per game. Haliburton dished out more than 10 assists a night with fewer than 2 turnovers. That's not just good, that's historic. And when the playoffs arrived, that discipline didn't fade. OKC once again led the league in turnover percentage. Indiana stayed in the top 3. Every round they advanced, that number stayed consistent. Every team that fell behind them, turnovers started piling up, but that was just half the story. Because while the best teams were protecting the ball, they were also winning the free throw battle. Not just drawing contact, but doing it over and over again, forcing defenses to collapse, to foul, to hesitate. Every trip to the line was another chance to reset the game, to control the pace, to punish over-aggressive opponents. And while other teams were struggling to get calls or avoid foul trouble, the Thunder and the Pacers kept getting to the line and keeping their opponents off it. It sounds small, but in a playoff game where the margin of victory can be 3 or 4 points, these things add up fast. One team gets 6 more free throws. That's potentially the entire game right there. One team turns the ball over 5 more times. That's 5 lost chances to score. And if you look at the box scores game after game, series after series, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The Pacers and Thunder weren't just winning with flair or highlights. They were winning with control. No giveaways, no foul trouble, just clean, efficient basketball. And it brought both of them deep into the postseason, defying
6 of 7 as a
exposing more talented rosters, and flipping the script on what matters most in playoff basketball. But it wasn't just a coincidence. It wasn't luck. It was a preview of what was coming, and by the time the finals arrived, those 2 stats weren't just a trend anymore. They were destiny. As the playoff rounds wore on, what started as a trend slowly turned into a pattern, and by the time the conference finals began, it was no longer just an interesting stat. It was a warning sign. Teams that protected the ball and won the free throw battle were moving forward. Teams that didn't, they were heading home. Let's take a closer look at how this played out. In the West, the Thunder were up against veteran rosters with more playoff experience, more physicality, and in some cases, more star power. None of that mattered. OKC didn't just beat teams, they broke them down. Possession by possession, mistake by mistake. In their second-round matchup, their opponent actually outshot them from 3. They even had a better offensive rebounding rate. But OKC turned the ball over just 9 times per game. Their opponent, nearly 15. That's 6 extra possessions a night. And guess what? They got to the line more, too, a +6 free throw differential over the series. That's not a stat. That's the series. It was the same story in the East. Indiana's run was never about overwhelming talent or superstar firepower. It was about composure, ball security, discipline. In a league where most teams run, gun, and hope for the best, the Pacers were playing chess. Teams would go on runs, the crowd would get into it, the pressure would build, and Haliburton would calmly walk the ball up, call for a screen, and find the open man. Over and over again. He wasn't forcing anything. He wasn't making highlight plays just to fire up the arena. He was making the right plays, and once again, the numbers followed. Indiana rarely turned it over just 11 times per game in the Eastern Conference Finals. Their opponents were up around 16. That's 5 extra possessions, which in close games often decided everything. And the free throws, the Pacers averaged 21 attempts per game. Their opponents, barely 15. That's 6 more chances to score with the clock stopped with tired legs and tired defenses. Now here's where it gets interesting. The deeper you go into the playoffs, the tighter the margins get. Coaching staffs adjust. Defenses take away your first and second options. Players get injured. Shooters get cold. The only constants left are the fundamentals. And that's exactly where these 2 stats shine. Turnover percentage and free throw differential aren't about schemes or matchups. They're about execution. They're about discipline. And most importantly, they're about control. That's what makes these stats so powerful. They don't just tell you who's playing well. They tell you who's in control of the game. And if there's one truth that's never changed in the NBA, it's that the team with more control of the pace, the ball, and the whistle usually wins. So by the time the finals matchup was set, it wasn't just about which team had more talent, or who had the MVP, or who had home court advantage. It came down to which team could continue to protect the ball and dominate the free throw line. The patterns had already revealed themselves. The data had been sitting there all along, quietly building up a picture. And by this point, it didn't just look like a trend. It looked like a blueprint. This was no longer a battle of flash versus grit or offense versus defense. This was about precision. 2 teams who had mastered the little things, the details that most fans overlook. But that championship, teams lived on. And when Game 1 tipped off, the first few possessions told the story loud and clear. No wasted dribbles, no careless passes. One team was in full control, calm, composed, surgical. They weren't just playing basketball, they were executing a formula now. The final outcome of the series came down to shot making, matchups, and individual moments, as it always does. But underneath it all, the foundation never changed. The team that took care of the ball and controlled the free throw line had the edge in every single game, even the ones they lost, even the ones that went to the wire. Because when the pressure peaks and the season's on the line, the team that doesn't make mistakes, the team that gets rewarded at the line, that's the team that survives. And here's what nobody was saying. Out loud, these two stats had been hiding in plain sight since October. You didn't need a crystal ball. You didn't need a genius-level basketball IQ. You just needed to know where to look. Turnover percentage, free throw differential. That's it. That's the whole script. And the numbers didn't just predict how teams would play. They predicted how the finals would end. By the time the finals reached Game 5, the suspense was gone for anyone who had been paying attention to the right numbers. Sure, the scorelines stayed close. There were highlight dunks, wild comebacks, buzzer beaters, everything the casual fan could want. But underneath all the chaos, the outcome had already been written. The two stats that guided us through the regular season and carried weight in every playoff series were now silently deciding the most important games of the year. Let's talk about what that really looked like on the court. In the most crucial moments, fourth quarter, 5 minutes left, one possession game, the winning team wasn't just the one hitting shots. It was the team that didn't blink, the team that didn't throw the ball away under pressure, the team that didn't foul out of frustration, the team that, time after time, walked calmly to the free throw line while their opponent argued with the refs. That's the difference between talent and discipline. One can carry you to the playoffs, the other wins you a championship. In this final series, the winning team never lost the turnover battle, not once. They stayed under control from start to finish, rarely making more than 10 turnovers in a game, and often forcing their opponent into 14, 15, even 17 giveaways. That's 7 extra possessions, 7 extra chances to score, and 7 fewer chances for the other side. And when the lights were brightest, the mistakes got worse. Bad passes, rushed drives, sloppy decisions, and each one was punished with cold efficiency. Then there was the free throw line, the quiet killer. The winning team had a +5 free throw differential for the entire series. Doesn't sound like much. That's 5 extra points per game without the clock moving. That's the difference between holding a lead and blowing it. That's the difference between a tied game with 1 minute left and giving up 2 possessions. And in the playoffs, especially the finals, that kind of control is priceless. What's wild is how invisible these advantages are while you're watching live. The crowd's focused on the big plays, the threes, the blocks, the poster dunks.
Can't give it to somebody.
But the game is being won somewhere else. In a smart outlet pass that avoids a turnover. In a pump fake that draws contact. In an off-ball screen that forces the defense into a late rotation and gives you an open lane. These aren't highlight moments.